Guys, it's quite funny that Dark World was probably, I think, Dark World was my first deck ever, and I'm actually quite happy to see Dark World be a meta deck again, in my opinion. I do think it's actually one of the meta decks for sure. It just FDKs your opponent very consistently, basically, which is what makes it so effective, and I think the synergy it has with the tactics cards is quite funny as well. So this is the build that I think I'm quite happy with right now. There's probably some minor changes I could make, but in general I do think this is how we go. So to start off with, I think you main deck 3 Lava Golem, just because there are some normal summons and stuff you can play in Dark World, but by and large I think your biggest issue is going to be random things like a Rise Heart, or your opponent putting up like, I don't know, like Trap Tricks, for example, having Reflesion and stuff and slowing you down. And so I think having a card that just outs that is great. And now it doesn't need to be Lava Golem. You can play Radiant as well. I think a nice thing about Radiant is that it's dark, so it works very well in this deck because you can discard Radiant as well. I don't know if Radiant's a fiend or not. I don't think it is. If it's a fiend, that makes it even better. Oh, Radiant's a fiend as well. You know what? I'll change that right here for you guys. Play Radiant. Don't play Lava Golem. Play Radiant because he's a fiend as well, which gives him even more synergy with Dark World. But yeah, I definitely think you want to start off with Kaijus in the main deck, just because it will just out a lot of threats for you, and in this deck you can use these cards as fuel for your lore, for your gates, etc, etc. Moving on from that, 3 Rainbow and 1 Graphar. So this is the ratio I've settled on, and I've gone through it a lot, but after looking at Simon He's profile and looking at some Joshua Schutz's profile, the thing I realized as well, and I agree with them, is that you really don't actually need to see Graphar that early on. You just don't. Like, you can get to him so consistently in this deck that having more than one most of the time is a brick. Now there are a couple of like unique circumstances where having more than one Graphar is good, but it's never enough for me to really want it. Now the only thing that might make me change, for example, is Kashtira. You could play 2 just if you're really scared of Kashtira, but beyond that I don't think you need more than one. I think this is fine. You do play 3 Rainbow though, because this does search obviously silver as well, so you do play 3 Rainbow because of that, and I do think it's a great card. Then moving on from that into still in the Dark World monsters, we play the 1 silver for the hand loop, then 3 Snow. She's amazing. The fact that she searches every card in the deck is great. I mean, yeah. And then Beige as well. Beige gives you rank 4 access, especially when you can combine it with Catalyzer, which is quite nice. And then I also play 3 Genta as well, because Genta is just absolutely cracked. The fact that it's not once per turn search is great. The fact that summon itself is great. The fact that it sets up gates is great. Everything about Genta is great. And then now this is a new one I'm doing as well, where I'm playing 3 Brow. And so what I really like about Brow is just that he's in this deck. I realize that you just want to cycle through your deck as fast as possible to see certain one-offs that will win you the game, and Brow lets you do that. Brow lets you do that very consistently, because obviously you're going to discard him and he's going to draw another card, so he just ends up being an upstart most of the time, and then fuel for your graveyard, which is really, really good. So I do like Brow at 3. And then 1 Cerulei. I was playing 2 for a little bit, but again, I think you can get away with just 1 Cerulei, especially because in this deck you will see every single card you need to see. And then, for example, if your opponent does banish your Cerulei or whatever, if they happen to have a Bisty or something random, this deck also has other plays. It does try and hand loop you for 5. I try and hand loop my opponent for 5 every game, but if that doesn't work out, I do have other things I can do as well. And so I think you can get away with just 1 Cerulei. Then Danger. So we play the 1 Bigfoot. Now the main reason I play Bigfoot is so that I have a 3rd level 8 that I can get to, so that I can make Coach King, which I think is just really a busted card. We play the 1 Nessie, though that could go up to 3. The problem with Nessie being at 3 is that there's just not enough good rank 7s to make that you can easily make in this deck. If to be honest, I could see a world where I made a Rice Heart if it was easier to get loads of rank 7s on the board, but they're just, yeah, you can't make enough good ones, and so the materials are a bit redundant. Play the 1 Mothman because he's good. You need level 4s. He's a danger and he's level 4. It's great. Same Chupacabra. And then play 1 of Shusunoka and Jackalope as well, just because they're good dangers that do plus you as well. Now, moving on to kind of the non-danger monsters, the only one we play right now is Salamander Catalyzer. So I was playing Zephyros, and I do think Zephyros is good, but I removed Zephyros just because in certain game states I think that I don't really value his ability to bounce. Like, it's not doing anything extra in terms of recurring resources that I don't already have. Like, it's an extra copy of Gates sometime, or in certain unique combos, like it's kind of cool with like with Cerulei or Silver on the field or something. But by and large, I don't think it's that relevant. I do think Salamander is amazing just because he gives me a targeted discard in my hand, which is really, really great. Now, I would love to play him at 3, but again, this deck you draw so much that anything you play at more than 1, you will probably see it more than 1. So if you're playing a card at more than 1, that means you want to see it more than once, and so because of that, that's why I do keep the Salamander down to 1. Then moving on, we play 3 Allure. yeah, cycle through your deck. This deck is perfect. Everything's redundant. Nothing in your deck is so important that you need to keep it. So yeah, you can banish everything. Play 3 drag down as well. So this has changed a lot, but the reason why I like drag down is even though it does give your opponent a draw, think of it like this. Your opponent has a hand of 5 cards. You get rid of 1 guaranteed, and then now they have a 1 in 34 chance or whatever of drawing another interruption. I'm okay with taking that risk, to get, if that makes sense, of getting rid of that 1 definite card in their hand for another one. Lets me see what they're playing as well. Yeah, get rid of hand traps and stuff. I just do think drag down is a really, really good card for this deck. I think as well, because I'm going to hand loop them as well, drag down is great because like, okay, I know what you're playing, I know what kind of things to expect for the top deck that you get, which is great. Talents and Thrust I think are mandatory now at 1-0s in this deck, just because if you're playing Ceruli, they are always live. Ceruli counts as them activating effect, and so this is how you hand loop for 5. And these cards are good anyway, like Thrust and Talents are just good cards in general, but in this deck, you summon Ceruli to their board, now they use an effect. Now you can you discard your silver or whatever. Silver will loop them, they've got 1 card left. You activate Thrust, you search Talents, you activate Talents, loop the last card. I mean, absolutely crazy. And then you can use the other effects if you really want to. Card Destruction, you're gonna see it, so I might as well play it. 1 Accession, you only need 1 Library, you need 1, and 3 Gates because it's an amazing field spell. Now going into the extra deck, there's nothing too unique here, so I'm only playing 2 Grapha. I used to play 3, but I was just realizing that my games were always over by turn 2. Like I don't have grinds in this deck. It just doesn't really come up unless you're like against Labyrinth or something maybe, but by and large grinds don't happen in this deck. It burns through all of its resources turn 1, and then it kills your opponent or loses on turn 3. So yeah, 2 Grapphas is enough. Play the Zeus, but I don't think I've ever actually made Zeus because it just doesn't get there, and we play a bunch of ranks that aren't relevant. The only 2 ranks that I ever really summon are Coach King and number 60. So number 60 is good obviously, and this is the rank 4 that you want to get to as soon as possible. I was playing Baguska, but again, it's just not as relevant. This deck doesn't have that many effects on board, and there's not many monsters. There's not many boards that are so oppressive that you need to Baguska pass in this deck. If loads of people playing Shifter, I might put Baguska back in, but other than that, I don't think it's needed. Coach King is just unfair because it's a draw 3 that also burns, so it's great in time, and this deck is very, very unfair in time because in time, do you know what you're going to do? You're going to play for 15 minutes and then you're going to burn your opponent, and they can't stop you. This deck takes so long to do its whole combo. And then we just play a bunch of generic links. Again, nothing too unique. The relevant links are going to be the Muckraker and the Akashic Magician for looping your Silver and Ceruli, which is quite good, but beyond that they're not relevant. There's some interesting things you can do across sheep, but just not that relevant again. They're moving into the side deck, so look, the side deck does need a bit of refinement, but I play Kurakara. I'm just really liking this card recently. I think it's great, and it's not hard to get to. Now, I would say, one thing I would say with this deck again is you're going to see your side cards, so you don't need any of these side cards at 3, apart from maybe evenly. So I'm playing cards at 3, but you could probably play them at 1 or 2 and be fine. Play the Lightning Storm for back row. This deck does have good interaction with back row because you do have Grapha to pop cards very frequently, which is nice. You've got Book of Eclipse, which is good for Kashtira, and they play 1 D-Barrier, 1 Brainwashing, 1 Anti-Spell. Anti-Spell, again, easy to see, so it's not bad. Brainwashing is a good card going first if you know you're going first to side in, because it gives you an extra discard from your opponent's hand, which is quite good. So if you don't get the hand loop off, you can go for Brainwashing, which is a more conservative play, but it does give you more discards. And then D-Barrier you can set with Talents and Thrust, and you're going to see it anyway drawing for your deck. So yeah, it just ends up being really good. But guys, that is my Dark Card deck. I do think this deck is awesome. I have some DB replays I might release on this because it does tend to just win. It's you play Solitaire and then you kill your opponent, which is great. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.